Peppa Pig's house always seemed like a safe place, warm and cozy. But none of its inhabitants suspected what dark secrets hide in the world of dreams. Peppa sleeps peacefully in her little bed, hugging her favorite toy. But something is wrong. Her smile slowly fades away. In her dream appears a familiar playground, but it looks strangely empty. The swings creak by themselves in the wind. From behind the slide appears a dark figure in a striped sweater and hat. This is Freddy, the master of nightmares who feeds on children's fears. Peppa tries to run away, but her little legs won't obey. Freddy slowly approaches, his terrifying smile growing wider and wider. Peppa wakes up screaming, but the house seems different. Shadows are longer, corners darker. Something has changed forever. In the morning, George also looks frightened. He saw the same scary man in his dreams. Brother and sister no longer feel safe. Mummy Pig notices that the children have become quiet and are afraid to fall asleep. She doesn't know that Freddy has already entered their world. Susie Sheep comes to visit, but she also looks worried. The nightmare guest visits all children in the neighborhood. At night, the house fills with strange sounds. Creaking floorboards, whispers in the walls. Freddy grows stronger with each frightened child. Daddy Pig tries to calm the family, but even he feels something is wrong. The shadows in the house live their own life. In the children's room, toys begin to move by themselves. George's teddy bear turns its head and stares with empty eyes. Peppa and George hide under the blanket, but this doesn't save them. Freddy can penetrate anywhere, into dreams, into reality, into the most hidden corners of children's souls. The mirror in the bathroom shows not a reflection, but Freddy's terrifying face. His claws scratch the glass from inside. The family tries to leave the house, but doors and windows won't open. They are trapped with the nightmare guest. Freddy appears in the living room. His laughter echoes through the house. He no longer hides. Now he is the master of this place. The children realize that the only way to defeat Freddy is not to fear him. But fear has already penetrated too deeply into their hearts. In the final scene, the house looks normal. The family smiles, but their eyes remain empty. Freddy has won. He took their souls, leaving only shells. The camera slowly moves away from the house, and in one of the windows flickers a familiar silhouette in a striped sweater. The nightmare is just beginning. The screen slowly darkens, but in the silence you can hear quiet children's crying and Freddy's sinister laughter. Some dreams never end. Peppa Pig's house always seemed like a safe place, warm and cozy. But today, something has changed, and even the bright walls couldn't hide the approaching darkness. Peppa lies in her little bed, sleeping soundly after a long day of play. But her sleep becomes restless. She tosses and turns, quietly whimpering. In the corner of the bedroom appears a dark shadow with a striped sweater and an old hat. This is Freddy, a mysterious figure who feeds on children's fears and penetrates their dreams. Peppa wakes up in a strange place. Her house looks familiar, but something is wrong. The walls have turned gray and the windows are covered with cobwebs. Where am I? Thinks Peppa, looking around. The house corridors seem endless and shadows move by themselves. Freddy slowly appears from around the corner, his yellow teeth gleaming in the twilight. He doesn't say a word, but his presence fills the air with fear. Peppa tries to run away, but her little legs won't obey. She calls for Mommy and Daddy, but no one answers. The house is empty and cold. Suddenly, George appears, but he looks scared and confused. His beloved dinosaur lies on the floor, as if forgotten forever. George, what's happening? Peppa runs to her brother, but he only silently points to Freddy's approaching shadow. Freddy becomes bigger and scarier, his hat casting an ominous shadow on the walls. He feeds on their fear, growing stronger with each second. Peppa and George huddle together when suddenly Susie Sheep appears. But she too looks frightened and lost in this nightmare world. We must be together, realizes Peppa. She takes George and Susie by the hands, and their friendship creates a small island of light in the darkness. Freddy approaches, but the light of friendship prevents him from coming closer. He gets angry and becomes even more terrifying, but cannot overcome their unity. "You feed on our fear," shouts Peppa, suddenly understanding the truth. "But we're not afraid when we're together." The children begin to remember happy moments, playing in puddles, jumping on beds, laughing with friends. Each memory weakens Freddy. Freddy begins to shrink, his power melting under the onslaught of positive emotions. He retreats into the shadows, but his eyes still burn with malice. "Remember," whispers the disappearing Freddy, "I will always return when you are lonely and frightened. Fear is my food." The house begins to brighten. The walls return their bright color, but the atmosphere remains tense. Something has changed forever. Peppa wakes up in her bed but realizes this wasn't just a dream. On the windowsill lies an old hat that wasn't there before. She approaches the window and sees a shadow in a striped sweater slowly disappearing in the morning mist. Freddy is gone, but he will definitely return. "Never stay alone with your fears," thinks Peppa, looking at sleeping George. "Together we are stronger than any nightmare." But deep down she knows Freddy is always nearby, waiting for a moment of weakness. And the next dream might be the last if you forget the lesson of friendship and unity. The sun rises over the house, but the shadow under Peppa's bed seems a little darker than usual. The nightmare is over, but its trace remains forever. Peppa Pig's house always seemed like a safe place, warm and cozy. But none of its inhabitants even suspected what dark secrets were hidden here, behind familiar walls and cheerful children's laughter. A new doll appeared in the corner of the nursery, red-haired with a sinister smile and sharp teeth. Mummy Pig noticed how the doll changed position, but decided that it just seemed to her. Daddy Pig heard children's laughter in the middle of the night, thought it was George playing in his sleep. Grandpa Pig saw the doll wink at him, attributed everything to fatigue and poor eyesight. Granny Pig felt someone's gaze on her, turned around. The doll was looking straight at her. George woke up and saw the doll next to his bed, started crying, but parents didn't believe his words. Only Peppa began to notice the strangeness. The doll moved when no one was looking. Peppa tried to tell the family about the danger, but everyone laughed at her childish fantasies. At night, the doll came fully alive, its eyes lit up with sinister red light. Chucky began his dark sorcery, the house filled with strange shadows and whispers. Peppa realized the doll wants to switch places with her, take her body and life. The family finally saw the truth, but Chucky's magic had already begun to work. One by one, family members fell into a trance. Their eyes became empty and glassy. Peppa tried to resist the evil spells, but strength left her with every second. Chucky laughed triumphantly. His plan almost succeeded. Soon he would become real. At the last moment, Peppa tried to warn others, but her voice turned into a doll's squeak. In the morning, neighbors found the house empty. Only dolls sat on the sofa, smiling. Among them was a new doll, a pink pig, with sad living eyes of Peppa. Chucky got what he wanted. Now he was part of the family forever. The house stands abandoned, but sometimes neighbors hear children's crying from inside. Lesson: never ignore children's premonitions. Sometimes they see what is hidden from adult eyes. A sunny day illuminated Peppa Pig's house, filling it with familiar laughter. Peppa and George were playing in their room where the bunk bed stood against the wall. Mummy Pig was cooking in the kitchen while Daddy Pig read his newspaper in the living room. Everything was as usual, but a slight tension hung in the air. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Susie Sheep stood on the threshold, but her gaze was unusually empty and her movements were stiff. She wasn't smiling as always and wasn't jumping with joy. Her eyes stared straight ahead, unblinking. Peppa ran joyfully toward her friend, but stopped in confusion. Susie silently extended her hand toward Peppa, her fingers trembling strangely. The air around them grew colder, and the sun seemed to dim. Mummy Pig came out of the kitchen, wiping her hands with a towel. She noticed Susie's strange behavior and frowned. Something was wrong with the little sheep, but it was hard to understand what exactly. Suddenly, the sky darkened, though it was midday. Strange greenish light penetrated through the house windows. Everyone froze, feeling inexplicable fear. Even George stopped playing with his dinosaur. A large metallic ship with flashing lights appeared from behind the clouds. It slowly descended toward the Pig family's house. The sound was like buzzing, but much louder and frightening. Daddy Pig ran out into the yard, his glasses sliding down his nose. He stared at the ship with his mouth open, not believing his eyes. His newspaper fell to the ground and scattered in the wind. Strange beings emerged from the ship, tall, gray, with large black eyes. They moved smoothly, as if floating above the ground. Their arms were long and thin, and their voices sounded like echoes. The aliens surrounded Peppa, their eyes glowing in the darkness. One of them extended a hand toward the girl, and she felt a strange attraction. Her legs walked forward on their own, though she didn't want them to. Mummy and Daddy Pig tried to run to their daughter, but an invisible force stopped them. They could only watch as Peppa slowly rose into the air toward the ship. Her eyes were wide open with fear. George cried and hid behind Mummy. His favorite dinosaur fell to the floor and broke. The house filled with silence that was louder than any scream. Time seemed to stop. The ship with Peppa inside began to rise into the sky. The green light grew brighter and the sound grew louder. The Pig family stood in the yard, helplessly looking up. Susie Sheep suddenly came alive, blinked and looked around in confusion. She didn't remember how she got here and didn't understand why everyone was crying. Her eyes became ordinary and lively again. Grandpa Pig arrived in his boat along the road. He saw the crying family and the dark sky above the house. His beard fluttered in the wind and his eyes were full of determination to help. All the townspeople gathered at the pig's house. Dr. Brown Bear, Miss Rabbit, Daddy Rabbit. Everyone looked at the sky where the ship was disappearing. Nobody knew what to do next. Mummy Pig fell to her knees and cried. Daddy Pig hugged her, his glasses fogged with tears. George pressed against his parents, still sobbing. The house without Peppa seemed empty and cold. Suddenly, a bright flash appeared in the sky. The aliens' ship stopped and began returning. Familiar laughter came from it. It was Peppa. She had somehow managed to convince the aliens to let her go. Peppa descended to the ground, smiling as usual. She told them that the aliens just wanted to play, but didn't know how to make friends properly. Now they had become friends and flew home to the stars. The Pig family hugged Peppa, and the sun shone brightly again. The house filled with laughter and joy. Everyone understood that even the scariest adventures can end well if you don't lose hope. Susie Sheep apologized for her strange behavior. It turned out the aliens had accidentally affected her with their technology. Now everything was back to normal, and friends could play together safely. A sunny day illuminated Peppa Pig's house, but strange tension hung in the air. Peppa and George were playing in their room when they heard unusual laughter outside the window. Mummy Pig was cooking lunch in the kitchen, but her hands were trembling. The knife slipped and fell to the floor with a metallic clang. Something was wrong. Daddy Pig was reading a newspaper in the living room, but the letters blurred before his eyes. He felt someone watching him from the dark corner of the room. There was a knock at the door. Susie Sheep stood on the threshold, but her eyes were empty and lifeless. She wasn't smiling as usual. Susie entered the house, moving strangely slowly. Her wool was wet, though there was no rain. Drops fell to the floor. A stranger in a bright costume appeared in the living room. His face was white as chalk and his smile too wide. It was Pennywise the Clown. Pennywise spoke in a voice like creaking old swings. He offered the children to play his favorite game, hide and seek in the dark. The lights in the house began to flicker. Shadows on the walls moved by themselves, taking frightening shapes. The house filled with strange sounds. George hid under the bed, but red balloons were waiting for him there. They popped one by one with loud bangs. Peppa ran to the attic, but the stairs creaked under her hooves. Upstairs, Pennywise met her with a box of old toys. Grandpa Pig came to visit, but his eyes glowed red. He spoke backwards and walked on the ceiling. Mummy and Daddy Pig searched for the children throughout the house. Their voices echoed off the walls, becoming quieter and scarier. In the basement, a door that wasn't there before opened. Children's crying and the smell of old earth came from there. Pennywise gathered the whole family in the living room. He showed them a mirror that reflected not them, but other terrible creatures. When neighbors came to check on the family in the morning, the house was empty. Only a child's drawing hung on the wall with the inscription, "We play with the clown forever." Sunny morning at Peppa Pig's house. The family has breakfast in the kitchen, but a strange shadow is visible in the garden outside. Peppa notices a new scarecrow in the garden. It stands motionless among the vegetables, but something about it seems wrong. George plays with his dinosaur in the yard. The scarecrow seems to watch him with yellow eyes, though that's impossible. Daddy Pig works in the garden near the scarecrow. He doesn't notice how the straw figure slightly turns its head. Mummy Pig hangs laundry outside. The wind dies down, but the scarecrow keeps swaying, making a quiet creaking sound. Susie Sheep comes to visit. The girls play hide and seek, but the scarecrow always knows where they're hiding. Grandpa Pig tells a strange story about who made this scarecrow. His eyes are full of worry. Evening comes. The family has dinner, but the scarecrow now stands closer to the house than in the morning. Night falls. Peppa wakes up from strange rustling outside her window. The scarecrow has disappeared from its place in the garden. George cries in his room. He says the scarecrow looked through his window and was smiling. Daddy and Mummy Pig search for the scarecrow with flashlights. They find only an empty pole and scattered straw. In the morning, the scarecrow is back in place, but now it holds a red ribbon from Peppa's dress in its hand. The family decides to remove the scarecrow, but when they approach it, it crumbles to dust at a single touch. Grandpa Pig confesses the scarecrow was made from the ashes of an old gardener who never left this garden. Days pass. The garden grows without the scarecrow, but sometimes a familiar shadow flickers between the plants, guarding the harvest forever. A sunny day lit up Peppa Pig's house, but something was wrong. Peppa was playing in her room when she noticed strange black slime on the window. "Mummy, what is this dirt?" Mummy Pig came to look, but the slime had disappeared. Only dark traces remained on the floor, leading to the attic. "Probably just rain, dear." George was playing with his dinosaur in the living room when the toy suddenly became sticky and black. He cried and ran to Daddy Pig. "Daddy, dinosaur is sick." Daddy Pig took the toy, but it dissolved in his hands, leaving black mass. A low voice came from the mass. "We are hungry." Susie Sheep came to visit, but her eyes were completely black. She spoke in a strange voice. "Peppa, want to play a new game?" The family gathered in the kitchen, but the food on the table was covered with black slime. The slime moved and whispered, "Join us." Grandpa Pig called on the phone, but only strange sounds came from the receiver. Black mass began flowing from the phone. "No one will help you." Peppa tried to run out of the house, but the door wouldn't open. Black slime covered all the walls. "We are everywhere, little pig." Heavy footsteps came from the basement. Something huge and dark was climbing the stairs. "We have come for all of you." The family climbed to the attic, but the black mass followed them. It took the form of a huge creature with white eyes. Resistance is futile. Venom showed his true face, a huge mouth with sharp teeth. He surrounded the family with black tentacles. "You will become part of us." Peppa screamed, but the darkness swallowed the sound. One by one, family members disappeared into the black mass. "We are one now." The house fell into complete silence. Only black slime slowly dripped from the roof. The neighbors noticed nothing. The next day, Peppa came out of the house, but her eyes were completely black. She smiled a strange smile. Want to play? Black slime began spreading throughout the town. Dark silhouettes flickered in house windows. No one knew what had begun.